Hey, welcome to another episode of Breaking Protocol from the Razzle Dazzle Show, our ongoing miniseries where we break down key updates and design questions straight from the development of Shade Protocol. These episodes are built around the game's community engagement series, Devs Ask You or DAUs, where Kendall and the team not only show what's changing, but invite fans to shape the journey with them. Today we're shining the spotlight on one of the game's most dangerous and fascinating foes, the Deathletter. These aren't just another enemy type to fight and forget. They bring hive-mind intelligence, adaptive tactics, and chilling lore that sets them apart from anything else you'll face in the game. Be sure to follow us and Little Legendary on our socials and YouTube channel, and be sure to join the Shade Protocol Discord server to follow new DAUs, vote in polls, and share your voice directly with the dev team. Links to everything will be in the description down below, and with all that being said, it's Razzle Dazzle time! Alright, Kendall, the Deathletter seems to be tied deeper within the lore of Shade Protocol from what I've gathered in the DAUs. Without spoilers, or major spoilers, how about that, how important are Deathletters to the larger story of Shade Protocol?
They're pretty important. I think like this is one attempt that I wanted to make, which was, can you have a more common enemy not be like overly trivial or insignificant to the core story of the game, and this is one of them. So the Deathletter, so the entire name is they're Saviors Deathletters. So what they are is they're a type of replica that they're a female sniper. Is kind of what the game looks like a sharpshooter, and they all are similar. No, in most games, of course, you get the same sprite over and over. This one is intentionally similar, right? They are pretty much copies of the exact same replica, and the way they work is that there's one of them, which you'll get to meet fairly early in the game, that pretty much has a control over all of them as in some sort of type of hive mind. It's more complicated than that, and it's not as overpowered as it sounds, but mostly imagine that you have a sniper that can have all these views as vantage points. So how powerful would someone that could see, so many multiple angles from so many different viewpoints could be, and what does that look like? So it is definitely inspired on things that I'm a fan of, like for example Sniper Wolf from the Metal Gear Solid series, and,
right.
and enemies like that kind of leave a mark with you when you feel under the pressure of a snipe scope. So I wanted to recreate that by also creating an enemy that won't be easy to deal with, and it's not just it's definitely an elite enemy. It's definitely an enemy that is much harder than the average enemy, but it's not like such a complex thing that every time you see one you're going to be like, oh, there we go again. It's definitely not that. So examples of things they can do that makes them pretty intense is like, you might try to throw your spear at them. They have like an ability where they will go into like the background and dodge it, so they will move out of the way and the spear will go through and it won't hit them. So they don't just sit there and die. But I guess to cover more of the question of the lore, the goal of the Deathletter protocol, they are a type of replica, and that in itself is a protocol. So the Deathletter protocol is a very aggressive and very hunter-like squadron of replicas that is completely against the faction of the player. They're hunting you down, and by consequence, they're incredibly surgical in that affair. They don't quite have the emotions to stop themselves from doing anything that they have to do in order to reach their target, and the gameplay against the actual enemy feels that way. They don't just sit there. If you try to hit them, they'll dodge backwards. If they can't snipe you from afar, they will. If they can get into a platform that you can't, they will. They are smart enough to be really dangerous, and they can take you down fairly quickly, especially when there's many of them. When you deal with more than one of them at a time, they can be exponentially more dangerous. So yes, lore-wise, they are core of the reason why you're being found. They're the ones tracking and looking for humans consistently and informing the rest of the Savior Army to go and hunt you down. So they are a very oppressive sub-faction of the Savior Army that is doing its very best and using all of its might to find and eliminate you.
So there's already a couple of interesting points that you brought up that that I would like to dive into, and you determine how far we get into that, right? First off, there's the Shade Protocol, and then there's the Deathletter Protocol. That's in itself is interesting. First, are there other types of protocols? We're not talking about Zura's protocol system, right? Not that, but like 4 enemy types. So there's a Deathletter protocol. Does that mean there's a Sky Trooper protocol? Is there a Snacklet protocol? Like what? How are these different from each other? What does that mean?
Exactly. So the answer is yes. The subcomponent of that is that there will be. So the idea is that, let's say, you were to find an enemy, a death letter, right? So they're called death letter because that's their protocol, right? And their protocol is pretty much their core directive. And even though they're alive and they're able to, make choices on their own, these specific ones, for example, of course, as kind of like a hive mind type of enemy, they don't really have a lot of freedom, right? And their interconnectedness makes them one, but I guess the main beautiful thing of protocols in itself is like that's what gives a replica its purpose and its goals, right? So they, even though like you are alive, you still were made, right? So even though replicas are, have a degree of free will that I think it's very important to the story. They're also made for certain purposes, and they want to adjust to those purposes, which is what protocols are. So protocols are like we'll call it like strong directives.
Yeah. So
that will overtake them for sure.
So very similar to, I guess, one of the inspirations of the game, Nier Automata, where there are different classes like 2B is a battle unit, or 9S is a scanner unit type.
Yes, exactly so. I think like in here it could be even more even more social. For example,
Right.
like there are replicas that are just made to be teachers. There's some made to be companions. There's some to be an elderly figure, right? Because humans in this world don't age the way that we do. So there's a lot of things in the purpose of replicas that have less to do with them being like very pragmatic, like battle unit or scanner unit. Some of them are literally more like you are your role is to I don't know, be a builder, right?
Right.
And they, when they're made like that, it's not like they're forced into that thing and that's the only thing they could ever do, but they're given all these skill sets that align with those things that is their purpose. And replicas are made by from this material in the game that's called the lithium. And this lore wise, this material is alive, and that's why the replicas are alive. And it really wants to serve. It's like its number one thing is that it wants to serve. So normally replicas are incredibly friendly. They are a part of society, just like they're just a normal, already kind of core component of society. And when they're made and they're given purpose, they are very receptive to it. Is there maybe a replica that was made, I don't know, to be a teacher that instead wants to be a soldier? Of course, like that can happen, but it's not common, and mostly because the skills and the abilities that they're given and the tool set that they're given aligns with their purpose, and their number one objective is to fill purpose. They want that. But of course, in the current state of the world, where things have changed drastically and humans are being hunted down, now you have a type of replica that was definitely made for war, and it's being employed to hunt humans, and it's going to do it surgically. It's going to do it incredibly well, and it's going to do it, in a very emotionless, tactical way. And that's something that you're going to feel, that oppression, and you're going to feel how they are not just letting you do whatever you want to. They're going to get in your way, and be dangerous for sure.
So then, what I assume sets Zura apart as a replicant is she's able to use multiple different kinds and combinations of protocols, which I know it's one of the key core systems and mechanics within the game, and that's for another episode. But I just assume that, like, since the majority of other replicas are set to like this one thing. What makes Zora special is that she can change that herself.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's part of like and in that way it kind of alludes a little bit to that kind of Mega Man vibe that people like to
Right.
like put on us. And of course I think that there's some awesomeness to that for sure. It's a great comparison. The core objective of Zero is to she was made to modulate and like pretty much take this thing called the Shade Protocol and kind of convert it into something else that we can live with, right? So she was made to solve this problem, but it just so happens since at the very beginning of the game, you are hyper aware that you failed. That's how the game starts. So it's a little bit intense, but you already know that you were unable to do it, you failed to do it, and there's consequences because of that. That's how the game starts. Part of your systems and the design of the character is that you will use whatever tools you need to in order to accomplish said goal. Therefore, you're able to change those protocols, and when you're able to change those protocols, you're able to, of course, acquire abilities that weren't yours, right? That maybe belong to a different type of replica,
Right.
which is part of what makes the game interesting and gives you like the versatility of creating different builds. We are not making it so that you can have like the protocol of every enemy in the game. That's not the current design of the game. That's not to say that we couldn't, one day do that, but that's not the current design. While there are going to be many protocols, they're meant to be more drastic and important. So you will get some that are very like the ones that you want to have, you will get to have them. I will frame it that way, right? So the ones that you really would see like, oh, I really wish I could do that, you're pretty much going to be able to do that. So it's less about she could just like absorb anyone else's protocol. That's not like how it works at all. But through research and using the technologies that the game provides you, you will be able to acquire these various protocols, and of course change them, which I think is the most interesting part of it. Right? Not only take it as it comes, but take parts of it and combine it with other, and then it makes something more of your own.
Yeah.
That's like the system that makes Zura unique, for sure.
Okay. Very interesting. I'm glad we got to talk about it. But all right, now back to Deathletter specifically. The hive mind aspect that leads me to think and to believe that there is a Deathletter Prime somewhere within the world controlling these other Deathletters, these other smaller ones, I guess, non-prime ones, whatever. Is that like kind of the vision of it, like having a hive mind, where yeah, you have all these different thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of death letters around the world searching. What also inspired this idea, and how does it change the way players approach these encounters?
So definitely, yes, the hive mind concept I think is very crucial for them because it creates an enemy that truly feels like a recon unit, right? They truly feel like they are studying you and learning from you, and that makes them incredibly dangerous, right? I don't want to spoil what that means, but I think like it could get interesting, right? The more you engage with death letters, the more interesting things will get over time. Mostly because you are, as you progress in the game, they should get more dangerous, and that's just a natural progression of the game improving. But I wouldn't say, and I would even say, like, it's not like there's like that many of them, and that already makes them incredibly dangerous.
Mm,
But the fact that there's many of them, which I will say, I mean, they're a common enemy in many areas of the game, so there's enough of them to be part of an army. But I wouldn't say like they're like mass produced to the point where every other enemy is a death letter. They are an elite enemy, and they're definitely like on the upper end of difficulty for the early game. Once you learn how to deal with them, you'll get through them, of course. But um, the main thing is when they're the hive mind thing is mostly there is definitely a death letter prime. I like that way of framing it. Definitely this death letter prime is very consequential to the story, and incredibly important. And she is foundationally different. Like you could tell her apart.
right.
The main thing with this character is that it's perceiving everything and everything at the same time from all of these death letters, right? So the amount of knowledge it has on the circumstances of everything that's happening around her is vastly more than any normal replica, and by consequence, her behavior is going to be different. So I think there is a lot there that players can kind of imagine what we're trying to do with this type of enemy, but it's an incredibly smart enemy. The Death Letter, the we'll call it the boss version of them for sure, is going to be a completely different thing and more evolved. But the normal enemy, it's definitely already smart enough. It does a lot of stuff. Like I think we made like 9 attacks for her.
Wow.
We're gonna have to cut that down because she's like a little bit. She has more attacks than bosses, but we're probably gonna bring that down the size. But we drew a lot of stuff, so she can, like, if you dash into her, she'll dash through you and like shoot you in the back. If you throw a spear at her, she can dodge it. If she's like in a situation where she's very far from you, she'll like charge a shot that can one shot you. It's very dangerous. So she has a lot of stuff. She has like a backdash that leaves a mine in front of her, and if you fall in the mine, the mine will like stun you, and then she'll shoot you and kill you. Like they're not gonna just die. They're very dangerous enemies. But once you kind of get their patterns, of course, you'll get through them. If there's many of them, you're gonna have to play a little smarter because they will get exponentially smarter because they're seeing what each other does, right? So that's what we want to hopefully make. It's a situation where the player will have to think of what they do in this situation in order to take care of at least one of them and reduce their the value that they get from being together, and then remove another one, and then remove another, and try to surgically eliminate this enemy team that's attacking you. Because if you don't, the chances of you dying are very high. Like they will definitely be the type of enemy that we want to feel oppressive, but it's not difficult. I wouldn't say it's like it is a level of difficulty that goes beyond an elite enemy that you would expect. It's just they're not meant to be like just okay, they have a lot of health or they do a lot of damage. That's not their power. Their power is their knowledge and their reaction to what you do.
Shade Protocol continues to be shaped not just by its creators, but by its community. Whether it's refining how story is told or rethinking player immersion, every DAU opens the door to deeper collaboration. This has been another episode of Breaking Protocol from the Razzle Dazzle Show. Want to help shape what Shade Protocol becomes? Join the Shade Protocol Discord server to follow new DAUs, vote in polls, and share your voice with the dev team directly. And if you like this breakdown, then stay tuned for more spotlights and interviews with Kendall right here on the Razzle Dazzle Show. Remember, the future of Amiria is still being written. We'll catch you on the next one.